Chapter 1. The Blood Moon Stranger. The night had been too quiet. Not the comforting kind of quiet that lulled one to sleep, but the eerie, unnatural stillness that sat just beneath the skin, waiting. In her modest first-floor bedroom, nestled in the old two-story house surrounded by towering trees and tangled woods, Aniya Sterling stirred under the warmth of her blanket. The air was humid, clinging to her skin like breath. Outside, the wind had died down hours ago. Her dream had been a sweet one, drifting through fields of white roses lit by silver-blue light, the sound of laughter trailing behind her like the tail of a shooting star. She had almost touched something, someone, in that dream. Then came the sound. Whack! It struck the window once, sharp and sudden like a thrown pebble. Aniya's eyes shot open. For a moment, she lay still, listening. Her bedroom ceiling loomed above her, shadows moving faintly from the streetlight outside. Whack! Again. Louder. Closer. She sat up, heart thudding. The house was silent. Even the old pipes, usually groaning at night, seemed to hold their breath. Another sound. A scrape this time. Pushing back the covers, she slipped out of bed and crept barefoot to the window. Her fingers reached for the curtain, hesitating. This wasn't the usual night animal. This wasn't some bird tapping the glass. There was purpose in the noise. She felt it in her bones. She pulled the curtain aside. And there he was. A man. Standing alone in her backyard. Naked. Completely covered in fresh blood. His skin glowed pale beneath the hesitant light of the cloud-veiled moon. His body, tall, lean, but powerful, was streaked in crimson, dripping from his fingers, his shoulders, his throat. Dark hair clung to his forehead, damp and tangled. His lips were slightly parted as he stared straight up at her, his gaze locking on hers with a desperation that rooted her to the spot. His eyes. They weren't normal. They shimmered faintly. Not red. Not gold. Something ancient. Something unnameable. His expression was vacant, confused, like someone caught in a waking nightmare. He looked like he had no idea who he was or why he was there. The moon shifted behind the clouds and bathed the backyard in silver. And then it happened. The bond. She felt it. Not imagined. Not metaphorical. Real. Physical. A pull deep in her gut, like an invisible hand had grabbed her from the inside and was drawing her forward. Her lips parted, and a gasp escaped. Her knees wobbled, her spine tingled. Her fingers gripped the windowsill with white knuckles. Something in her was screaming for him. Not words. Not sense. Instinct. Madness. Hunger. She wanted to run to him. Touch him. She didn't even know his name, but her cells, her blood, her bones recognized something she could not explain. It wasn't lust. It wasn't fear. It was connection. Wild. Primal. Terrifying. She shook her head furiously, stepping back from the window. What is this?" she whispered, clutching her chest. Her heart pounded like a war drum. This wasn't normal. This wasn't sane. The man below blinked. Slowly. Then looked down at himself, at the blood on his hands, as if noticing it for the first time. And then, something in his eyes shifted. Recognition. Not of her, but of the pain. The confusion. The bond. And then he collapsed. Aniya gasped. She didn't think, just moved. She threw on her coat over her hoodie, slipped into sneakers, and ran through the hallway. The front door creaked open with a groan, and cool night air rushed to meet her. She found him lying on the grass. Still naked. Still drenched in blood. But breathing. His chest rose and fell in sharp, desperate bursts. His eyes flickered open as she knelt beside him, and for a moment, just a breath, he looked at her like he'd known her forever. Then darkness took him again. She should have called the police. That was the first rule. Always call for help when a blood-covered stranger passes out in your backyard. But something in her, something deeper than logic, knew she couldn't. Because the moment she touched his skin to check his pulse, something passed between them. Heat. Electricity. A soft echo in her mind that was not hers. Find me. Her fingers recoiled, but the feeling lingered. So she dragged him inside. She found an old quilt in the linen closet and wrapped it around him. Her hands were trembling. She didn't know if she was helping a victim, a killer, or something worse. She didn't sleep. She sat on the armchair across from the couch, watching him. He lay there, still unconscious, the blood crusting slowly on his skin. He hadn't moved. Not a twitch. Not a breath of sound. But even in sleep, his presence was magnetic. Like gravity had shifted and now revolved around him. The sun rose slowly. At exactly 6:06 a.m., he opened his eyes. Aniya jumped slightly as his lids fluttered. He groaned, shifting under the quilt. His muscles tensed, every inch of him coiled like a wolf sensing danger. Their eyes met again. He sat up abruptly, the blanket slipping from his shoulders. His eyes were wide, searching, afraid, hungry. "Where am I?" he rasped. His voice was deep, ragged, as though it hadn't been used in years. Aniya stood cautiously. "You're in my house. I found you, in my yard. You were—" "I don't remember," he said quickly, eyes darting to the door, then back to her. "I don't remember anything." He looked down. At his hands. At the blood. "No," he whispered. "Not again." "Again." Aniya's voice trembled. "What's your name?" He closed his eyes. "I don't know." That was the beginning. Over the next days, she tried to piece him together. He didn't remember where he came from, how he ended up in her yard, or why his body bore ancient-looking scars beneath the dried blood. But slowly, fragments began to emerge. He told her he had dreams. Of fire. Of forests. Of howling. Of silver eyes in the dark. He could hear things no human could. Smell emotions on her skin. Sometimes his body would tremble as the moon rose, his jaw clenched, as if holding something back. One night, he stood at the edge of the woods, shirtless, staring into the trees. Aniya stepped beside him. "What are you looking for?" He didn't answer. But then he said something that chilled her to her core. "I know your name," he whispered. "I heard it, before I woke up. I said it, over and over. In my dream." She blinked. "How?" He turned his eyes on her. "Because you were there." The bond grew stronger. Unseen, but undeniable. When she touched him, it pulsed. When he was near, her body reacted. When he looked at her like she was his anchor to the world, she couldn't breathe. He began to remember pieces of who he was. A curse. A ritual gone wrong. A night under a blood-red moon. A promise made to a dying woman. And then, he remembered a name. Lucian. He was hunted. That much he knew. By creatures who once called him brother. By a council that had tried to kill him. By fate itself. And worst of all, he wasn't just bonded to her by accident. He'd chosen it. Long ago. Before time unraveled. Aniya was no ordinary woman. She was the key to his salvation, or his destruction. Chapter 2. The Curse of Nightfall. The wind howled that night, not through the trees, but within Aniya. A storm brewed deep inside her. She didn't know where it had come from, only that it had been waiting. Coiled. Watching. And now that Lucian had stepped, bled, into her life, the storm had begun to rise. It had been 2 weeks since the stranger collapsed in her backyard. 2 weeks of careful silence, soft footsteps, whispers in the dark. Lucian had learned how to walk again without trembling, how to eat without wincing, how to sleep without crying out. But the bond between them? It only grew stronger. Some nights, she would wake with her heart pounding, tears on her cheeks, and no memory of why. Other nights, she'd find Lucian sitting upright on the floor beside her bed, eyes glazed, whispering in a language she didn't recognize. And still, she couldn't ask him to leave. Because a part of her didn't want him to. The first attack came on a Wednesday. A black feather on her doorstep. That's all it was. But the way Lucian stared at it, like it was a death omen, told her everything. His voice was hoarse. "They found me." "Who?" she asked. He didn't answer. He just picked up the feather, held it to the flame of a candle, and watched it turn to ash. That night, he stayed at the door, watching the woods, his jaw clenched, body tense. His eyes reflected the moonlight like polished silver. He didn't sleep. And neither did she. The next morning, everything changed. Aniya was washing dishes when the pain struck, sudden, blinding. It tore through her stomach like claws and dropped her to her knees. Her breath came in short, wild gasps. Lucien was there in seconds, cradling her. "What's happening?" she gasped, eyes wide with terror. He didn't answer. Instead, he placed his palm flat against her sternum. The warmth that flowed from him was unnatural, too alive, too ancient. The pain eased. But what came next terrified her more. She heard his thoughts. Clear. Echoed. Inside her mind. "It's too soon. She's waking. The blood is responding." Her voice trembled. "What did you say?" Lucien looked stunned. "You heard me." She nodded slowly. He sat back, his face pale. "The bond, it's deepening. You shouldn't be able to hear me unless—" "Unless what?" He hesitated, then said quietly, "Unless you were mine." That evening, Lucien told her everything. Who he truly was, what he used to be, and what was coming for both of them. He was no ordinary man. He had been born of two bloodlines, Lupi and Umbri, beast and shadow. Royalty in a forgotten court of wolves. Destined to lead. But destiny is never kind. At 21, Lucien refused the blood-binding ritual that would have turned him into a full alpha. He loved a woman from the mortal realm, dark skin, golden eyes, fierce like fire. Her name? Aniya. Not this Aniya, but another. Centuries ago. The original. They'd fallen in love under the blood moon, breaking every rule of his kind. To protect her, Lucien bound her soul to his. It was forbidden magic, blood oath sealed by moonfire. A bond that spanned lifetimes. But the council found out. They slaughtered her. And cursed him. He would awaken in every generation where she was reborn, naked, blood-soaked, without memory, drawn to her by the bond. Only when she accepted him completely could the curse be broken. Only then could they either live or die together. Aniya sat in silence, the weight of his words crushing her chest. "You're telling me I'm her. Reborn." Lucien nodded. "You are, and you're not. But your soul remembers me. That's why the bond calls you." She shook her head slowly. "This is insane. Magic. Curses. Reincarnation. I wish it weren't true. What happens if I walk away?" He looked her dead in the eyes. "You'll feel yourself being pulled apart. The bond will decay. And you'll die before the next moon." She didn't sleep that night. How could she? The man in her home was tied to her by fate. Magic. Death. And part of her believed him. Not because he was convincing. Not because he looked at her like she was his son after centuries in darkness. But because her body already knew. Because when he touched her hand, her bones didn't scream. They sang. The next attack came without warning. 3 figures. Cloaked in mist. No footsteps. No breath. They emerged from the forest like wraiths, eyes glowing red, snarls rising from their throats. Lucien didn't hesitate. He shifted. Not fully. His body remained mostly human, but his claws elongated, his back arched, and his voice dropped into a growl that made Aniya's blood freeze. The fight was brutal. Fast. Lucien tore through them like a storm, but he bled. Deep cuts. Silver burns. Aniya stood on the porch, paralyzed. One of the creatures broke past Lucien and lunged at her, fangs bared. And that's when it happened. She screamed. Not a human scream. A wave. A force. The air around her cracked like thunder, and the creature was flung backward, crashing into a tree with bone-snapping impact. Lucien turned. Stared at her, wide-eyed. "Your power," he said breathlessly. "It's awakening." They ran that night. They had no choice. They left the house, the woods, the lives they once knew. Crossed into the forgotten parts of the land, the spaces between maps, where the moon felt closer and the air tasted of old magic. Lucien told her about the Council of Nightfall, the elders who had cursed him. They ruled the hidden world of the Lupi. And they feared her rebirth. Because she was more than his mate. She was the last moon-blessed. a rare bloodline born only once every 1,000 years. A hybrid of human heart and beast power. And only she could choose the next alpha to unite the clans. Lucien had been their rightful leader. Until love made him a traitor. They found sanctuary in a ruin near the cliffs, a temple of stone carved with ancient glyphs. Lucien said it had once been sacred to their kind. It had since been forgotten. But inside, Aniya felt safe. Not just from the monsters hunting them. From herself. Because the power inside her was growing stronger. She could feel others' emotions. Hear distant howls before they arrived. See memories in Lucien's eyes when he looked at her. And the more she unlocked, the more she feared who she was becoming. One night, under the full moon, she broke. She found Lucien standing shirtless beneath the light, his body scarred, his back turned to her. "Why me?" she asked, voice shaking. He didn't turn. "Because you're the only thing I've ever wanted that made me feel whole. Not powerful. Not feared. Human." She walked to him slowly. "And what happens when the bond is complete?" He turned. Eyes glowing. "I become whole. And so do you. The curse ends. Or everything burns." They kissed for the first time beneath that moon. It was not soft. It was not gentle. It was fate reclaiming what had been stolen. But peace never lasts. As dawn approached, Lucien froze, his nostrils flared. "They've found us." Aniya didn't need to ask who. From the mist, cloaked figures appeared, this time, not 3. A dozen. And leading them, a woman cloaked in white, with hair like black fire and eyes that glowed the color of blood. Lucien's body trembled. "Celine, the High Priestess?" Aniya asked, backing away. "No," he said, voice dark. "My sister." Chapter 3. Blood Oaths and Betrayals. Celine. The name hung in the air like poison. Lucien's sister stepped forward, moonlight cascading over her robes like falling glass. Her presence was regal, magnetic, and terrifying. The cloaked warriors behind her stood motionless, as if tethered to her breath. Aniya could barely breathe. The resemblance was faint, Lucien's sharp jaw, her obsidian hair, but Celine was something else entirely. Her aura felt ancient, too powerful for the world to contain. Her eyes held no warmth, just the fire of old hatred. "You look good for a dead man," she said, voice like silk cut with razors. Lucien didn't flinch. "You shouldn't have come here. I warned the council. I told them what would happen if the Moonblessed was reborn." Aniya stepped forward. "I'm not your enemy." Celine's gaze pierced her. "No. But you are our undoing." Lucien growled low in his throat. Celine raised her hand, and instantly her guards moved forward, silent, trained, merciless. Lucien turned to Aniya. "Run." "No." "Run." But before either could move, a net of silver light erupted from the warrior's hands, surrounding Lucien in a pulsing cage. He dropped to his knees, howling in pain. The magic sizzled against his skin like acid. Aniya screamed and charged at Celine. But Celine was ready. With a flick of her wrist, the air around Aniya cracked, and everything went black. She awoke in a stone chamber. Cold. Alone. Powerless. There were no windows. No time. No Lucien. She tried to stand, but her legs gave out. Her entire body felt hollow, drained. Then a voice spoke from the shadows. "You're awake." Aniya looked up. A woman emerged, young, beautiful, with short curly hair and tear-soaked eyes. "My name is Mara. I was like you once." Aniya blinked. "Where are we?" "The Underhold. Beneath the ruins of the first temple." "Where's Lucien?" Mara's face darkened. "They're breaking him. Or trying to." Aniya gripped the wall. "Why are you helping me?" Mara swallowed hard. "Because I failed. When I was chosen as the Moonblessed, I turned away from it. I betrayed him." Aniya's heart stopped. "You loved Lucien?" Mara nodded slowly. "In another life. But my fear killed him. Now I serve the council to survive. But I won't let you make my mistake." She stepped closer and pressed something into Aniya's hand, a small vial of glowing white liquid. This will help you break the enchantment holding your power. When the time comes, drink it. You must embrace the bond, or everything dies." Before Aniya could speak, footsteps echoed beyond the chamber. Mara turned. "They're coming. I'll stall them. Go north. The blood moon rises in 2 nights. That's your only window." And then she was gone. Lucian was broken. They had chained him to the moon altar, silver cuffs around his wrists and ankles, burning deep into his skin. His breath came in shudders. But even tortured, his thoughts were with her. When Celine approached, he didn't look at her. "I warned you," she said softly. "She makes you weak." Lucian spit blood at her feet. "She makes me human." Celine's face twisted. "She's going to burn this world. She's going to save it." Celine's fingers curled, and magic struck his chest like lightning. He screamed, but his bond with Aniya surged beneath it, protecting a core the pain couldn't touch. Aniya escaped that night. The vial had worked, flooding her body with energy so fierce it nearly tore her apart. She broke the stone locks, shifted her speed, and moved like wind through the underworld tunnels. Guided by instincts not her own, she emerged in the northern ruins just as the blood moon began to rise. Lucian was there. Barely alive. Chained. Dying. Celine stood before him, preparing the unbinding ritual, a spell to sever their bond forever, which would kill them both. Aniya screamed, her voice shattering through the trees like a war cry. Celine turned, eyes wide in disbelief. "You survived." Aniya stepped forward. Changed. Glowing. Awakened. "You tried to break me," she whispered. "But he made me stronger." She held her palm up, and moonlight gathered in her hand like liquid fire. Celine screamed and launched a bolt of darkness at her. Aniya deflected it with a flick of her wrist. Then she unleashed everything. Her pain. Her fear. Her love. A tidal wave of power exploded from her core and swept the ruins in silver flame. The ground cracked. The altar split. And the chains holding Lucian shattered. The final battle between the siblings was brutal. Fangs. Claws. Magic. Blood. Celine fought like a god. But Lucian and Aniya fought like one soul. The bond between them pulsed stronger than any spell. And in the final blow, as Celine raised her blade to strike Aniya, Lucian lunged forward, impaling himself on the weapon to protect her. Celine's eyes widened. Lucian smiled through blood. "That's the thing about curses, sister." He grabbed the blade and pulled her into the fire of the moonlight. Both vanished in a scream of light. Aniya collapsed. When she awoke, she was alone on the altar. Lucian was gone. The forest was silent. She screamed his name until her voice broke. Days passed. She wandered the woods, hollow, haunted. But the bond remained. Not loud, not bright, just a whisper in her soul. Then one night, under a waning moon, she returned to the temple ruins, and found a single white rose growing from the stone. She knelt beside it, and heard his voice inside her. "I chose this. I'd choose you again. Find me." Chapter 4. When the moon turns black. The air in the ruined chapel felt like it was holding its breath. The candles Aniya had lit earlier now flickered with an unnatural rhythm, their flames bowing toward the tall, blood-stained figure in the center of the room. His eyes, those molten, cursed eyes, were locked on hers as if the world around them no longer existed. But the moment between them was fragile. The bond still pulled at her ribs like an unyielding chain, but now there was a terrible undertone to it, a whisper she could almost hear. "Choose him, and the world burns. Deny him, and your soul will wither." "Don't come closer," Aniya said, though her voice trembled with a lie she wished was truth. She wanted him near. She wanted him so close the pull could finally stop hurting. He took a slow step forward, bare feet silent on the cracked tiles, blood still dripping from his hands. "You know I can't stop. You've felt it since the night I found you. Since the moon showed you what you are to me." "That night was a curse," she spat, though her heartbeat betrayed her. His jaw tightened. "That night saved me." Lightning split the clouds outside, and for an instant, the moonlight through the shattered window turned the world silver. In that flash, Aniya saw something she hadn't before. Deep beneath the feral hunger in his eyes, There was grief, a grief so vast it felt like an ocean. But the moment ended as the sky darkened again, and the bond's pull surged until her knees nearly gave out. Suddenly, the air around her turned heavy, and her vision blurred. She wasn't in the chapel anymore. She was in a wasteland. The earth cracked and smoking beneath a blackened sky. The man, her man, stood there, covered in the same blood, but this time it wasn't his own. All around him lay bodies, thousands, their lifeless eyes reflecting the eclipse above. Her chest constricted. She saw herself there too, kneeling beside him, her hands on his face, but her eyes were empty. Dead. The vision snapped away, and she was back in the chapel, gasping. "What did you see?" His voice was almost desperate. "You," she whispered. "You, and everything ending." He stepped closer, close enough now that the air between them buzzed. "It's the bond, Aniya. It's why you can't fight me. We are not meant to be apart." She shook her head, tears brimming. "If I choose you, I doom everything. And if you don't—" His voice cracked. "I will still burn this world looking for you." The truth fell between them like a blade. There was no happy ending. Not for them. Not for anyone. She could feel the weight of fate pressing down, and for the first time, she understood why her grandmother had warned her. Some bonds are made of fire, and fire consumes all. Her hand moved to the silver dagger at her belt, the one blessed under a moon she would never see again. He noticed, but didn't move. "You'd rather kill me than be mine?" he asked, voice low. Tears slid down her cheeks. "I'd rather kill myself than watch the world burn because of us." Before he could reach her, she turned the blade inward, pressing it to her chest. His roar shook the very walls, but it was too late. The silver bit into her flesh, and the bond snapped like a broken spine. The pain was a scream in her veins, not just hers, but his too. He caught her as she fell, his blood mixing with hers. "No," he whispered, rocking her against him. "No, no, no." Outside, the moon turned black. The wind howled. Somewhere, fate exhaled in relief. Her final breath was a whisper in his ear. "I loved you." And then she was gone. He stayed there for hours, cradling her lifeless body, until the first rays of dawn crept into the chapel. Then, without a sound, he laid her down gently, kissed her forehead, and walked into the rising sun, letting it burn him into nothing. The world was safe. But love had lost.